Look, you should know the deal by now. I make shorter, tightly edited videos testing out weird or interesting experiments in Dead by Daylight, and occasionally drawing attention to news and updates and things like that. When people asked me to make a tier list video, I had no idea how to approach it. I could have just recorded myself talking for 8 hours and then edited that down, but I'm not as eloquent as someone like Odstava, so I can't just do that. I have to like script everything out and then abide by that script to the word. So thought about it a lot, and I settled on something a little bit weirder. So the main thing that people seem to want is a killer tier list video, but I'm only a purple rank killer, so I can't just make a killer tier list video because I would get everything wrong. Every time I play killer on stream, someone's like, that build's bad, you moron. Doesn't matter if I get the 4K, I always get the 4K, and everyone's so mean to me. Why are you all so mean to me? So I thought, okay, I'm a survivor main. I could make a Mimi survivor tier list, talk about random crap like, ooh, Jake is very loud and has okay perks. That kind of video has merit in and of itself. I don't know why I'm making fun of it. Then I thought, well, that doesn't really have any meat to it. That's not really in keeping with my other videos. So how about I do a survivor perk list? But then every single time that I do something about survivor perks, someone says, no, you're wrong about No Mither. It's actually an amazing red one. It's actually a red wank one. So instead, I'm jumping on the bandwagon, doing a killer tier list, but with a slight twist. That rhymes. I'm not going to rank how they are to play or just say who is and isn't strong. I'm going to rank them from a survivor main perspective, a red rank survivor main perspective. What that means is that rather than just saying, oh, this person is good because he has this ability, I'm going to be thinking, what runs through my head when I find out who the killer is, and why does that make them a good or a bad killer? From a survivor's perspective, I'm going to be ranking them on the all-new Pebsie Cryometer. Got to shove in some reference to YouTube membership somehow. I also think that there's more to killers than just strength or how viable they are. So I'm also going to be ranking them on the all-new Pebsie Hypometer. Might be laying this on a little bit too thick. The point of the Hypometer is to say whether or not I think they're interesting design-wise or mechanically. Because when you have a favorite killer, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the strongest killer. As you'll find out from my favorite killers, there are Blight mains. That's proof that strength doesn't equal power. Oh, Blight mains disliking the video already. That was quick. You probably aren't going to agree with my decisions here, but they're my decisions, so I don't care. Also, I probably won't be sticking to these definitions. I know I've just recorded like 3 minutes of justifying my decision here, but don't care. It's my video. My tongue's brown because I'm drinking coffee. That's not going to annoy me when I'm editing. Right, it's enough rambling for a video that's already going to be way too long. Let's go in order of appearance. The Trapper. I don't think that the Trapper is particularly strong, but playing against him instantly changes the way that I experience the game. I can no longer run about without a care in the world, doing gens and vaulting through windows. No, I need to actually pay attention to the environment. God forbid I pay attention. Trapper is a killer that can fundamentally alter and gain a strong degree of control over chasers no matter how skilled you are at looping as a survivor. Playing against a good Trapper at the start of a stream messes me up for the rest of the stream. Something triggers in my mind that stays with me, a feeling of alertness and stress that very few other killers give me. It doesn't matter how good I am, if I miss a single detail in the world, my chasing days may be abruptly cut short. He gets 3 Pebsie cries out of 5 for needing a good degree of skill to play properly, but also being powerful on his own and crazy stressful. He's the first killer and therefore the baseline coolness killer, so he only gets a single Pebsie hype, I'm afraid. The Wraith. Since 4.5.0, the Wraith is an absolute force to be reckoned with. Originally pre-buff, I wrote here that he came off as nothing more than an M1 killer with a nifty speed boost. That is no longer the case. Yeah, I'm aware of the fact this video took me so long to make. There have been 3 updates in that time. The Wraith is frightening and powerful, and he creeps up on you, and if you're out of position against him, then there's basically nothing you can do. He's one of the killers that, playing at red ranks, fills me with fear the moment I know who the killer is. There are some fantastic Wraith mains out there at rank 1. They know exactly how to utilize that speed boost when uncloaking to decimate you in chases. He's kind of a high skill ceiling killer for that reason, and the majority of Wraiths I've gone up against since 4.5.0 have been very, very strong. He gets a 4 out of 5 on the cryometer. 2 killers in and already 3 things people can disagree with. Ah, well, my list. Now, in terms of design, I would like to set the scene. I'm a rank 20. I've booted up Dead by Daylight for the first time ever at the recommendation of my brother, and the sound hits me immediately. The atmosphere. The fog. Everything is terrifying. Then, from behind me, I hear a growling sound and a bell. I have a soft spot for stealth killers, and the Wraith's design from sound through to visual aesthetic is haunting, and as a noob, he terrified me. So, right now. Not knowing then how to spot him from a distance, his invisibility worked wonders and made me jump and fret for my life constantly. It's a cool ability and an even cooler design. He gets a 4 out of 5 on the hypometer. Hillbilly. Billy is an interesting one. Some killers like Doctor hinder your ability to take advantage of the core mechanics of looping. We will get to that later, believe me. Instead, Billy rewards you for utilizing them effectively, but not in a way that feels cheap. You have to time things right, make split-second decisions on how long you have to get to a window or pallet. This goes both ways, too. He can insta-down you and storm through loops of a high degree of mobility and map pressure, which is rewarding if you're good at him and frustrating if you aren't. He's got a high skill ceiling in one of the best ways. I'm excited when I see a Billy, not because I think, hey, I can outrun this guy easily, but because I know that any chase is going to be a battle of who can run the mechanics better. If I go down, that's on me. Not some cheap insta-down chainsaw mechanic, but one that rewards high skill play. However, there are 2 chainsaw boys and one is clearly the stronger. Billy has fantastic map pressure and mobility, but isn't as practical in chases, and in a lot of cases is super easy to outrun when he messes up his ability. He gets a 3 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 4 out of 5 on the hypometer for being interesting mechanically, but not especially strong unless in the right hands. The Nurse. Whew, it's dislike time. The Nurse is, without a doubt, the highest risk versus reward killer. I don't think that's up for discussion. You can't loop with her because she's the only killer that's slower than survivors at 3.85 meters per second base versus survivors 4 meters per second running speed. Everything you know about the game is therefore thrown on its head. A good Nurse is amazingly effective, and a bad or even a mediocre Nurse is amazingly ineffective. I want to rank Nurse highly, I do, I promise you. But the fact of the matter is that you're either dead quickly or there's no threat at all. And that means that when I see her, I'm really not that bothered because, yeah, if she's good at what she does, then the game is going to be over fast. If she's bad at what she does, then the game is going to be over fast. So if we lose, well, I'll be in another game in 10 minutes, so why would I care? And if we win, then cool. There's just no in-between with the Nurse. Similarly to Billy, as already discussed, the Nurse changes the way that you experience using central chase mechanics like windows and pallets. The difference is that Billy chases reward you and the killer for knowing how to deal with those situations, whereas the Nurse only rewards you for how well you deal with the Nurse specifically, by forcing you to not use those chase mechanics at all, but learn how to deal with her blink. The problem is that being good against the Nurse isn't the same as being good at Dead by Daylight. I mean, obviously there are elements of it that cross over, but for the most part, you could be really, really good at Dead by Daylight, have 3,000-4,000 hours in the game. If you've never faced a Nurse before, you're not going to know how to deal with her. That isn't interesting to me. I like killers that take advantage of the existing mechanics and then reward survivors and killers for using them effectively, rather than rewarding survivors and killers for just knowing how to deal with that power specifically. So she gets a 2 out of 5 on the cryometer. She is insanely powerful, don't get me wrong, just there's no threat because games are either too short and easy or they're over in minutes. I feel basically zero fear. In terms of how cool she is, well, for every reason that she isn't strong in the hands of a low-rank killer, she's terrifying to go up against if you don't know what to expect. Her sound design is perfection, from her labored breathing to the cry she gives out when using her power. The blink looks cool and quite frankly is a really interesting move for all of the reasons that I don't like it in regular gameplay. So she gets a 4 out of 5 on the hypometer for design and for being interesting mechanically. It would be a 5 out of 5 if she didn't completely bypass chase mechanics, but can't do her dirtier than that. She's a great killer. Remember, please, that this isn't about skill, it's not about power. I know that I'm reiterating this for like the 4th time in 10 minutes, but really, really important. This isn't about strength. The Nurse is one of the strongest killers in my opinion, but I just don't find her that threatening to go up against. Sorry, I know I've committed a cardinal sin. I'm kind of making drinking in my videos its own like meme and subculture. You might completely unintentionally, I just fancy taking a sip and I just don't think about the fact that I'm recording. Anyway, moving on. Myers. God, I love Myers. Sorry everyone. I freaking love Myers. At its core, Myers is an extremely boring killer. Do the stary for a minute or two, then chase for the stabby. The mechanics don't change the way you play the game as a survivor and barely change the way you approach situations as a killer, but is he cool. Some of my biggest jump scare moments in DBD have been because of Myers. Not because a loud audio cue plays at the same time as the camera shifts, like some other killers I could mention with cheap jump scare mechanics. Purely because his design is actually creepy and his power plays into that. In the original 1978 John Carpenter film Halloween, Myers stares at his victims for the first hour of the movie. He just stares menacingly. These days, it feels less like a slow burn and more like a boring burn. But the fact that the devs found a way to incorporate that element of the film so perfectly into the shape's design is just perfection. You see him from across the map staring at you. You don't know how long he's been there for. Watching. Waiting. It's so cool. Putting that bias aside, he's just kind of okay as a killer. He's a big threat in certain situations, and again, I've seen rank 1 killers play him in a terrifyingly strong way, but the majority of the time, he's only okay. He stops being a stealth killer past tier 1, which is a real shame, and then he's fairly easy to avoid. You can tell when he's about to hit tier 3 and plan accordingly. I'm not going to talk about his add-ons, because I think it's pretty much a fact that he has the most overpowered add-ons in the game. Infinite Exposed, instant Mori without even having to get you on the floor. It's ridiculous. All in, I give Myers only 2 out of 5 Pebsie cries, but in terms of design, I give him the first 5 out of 5 on the hypometer. The Hag. I hate the Hag. I despise her. Not out of frustration, but honestly, fear. Of course, that does mean that she's a great killer. Hag puts me on such an edge. It doesn't have the psychological impact that the Trapper has, where I'm on edge for the rest of the play session, but during the game, I'm consumed by anxiety. It's not even that she's a particularly strong killer, it's just that the camera's movement and the loudness of the sound when she pops up gets me every single time. Unlike Myers or Trapper jump scares, though, it feels cheap rather than earned and creepy. I think this is because it relies on a sudden loud sound and camera judder for an impact rather than a tangible game setback in the Trapper's case, or just being creepy in general in Myers' case. I also think this is why it doesn't have such a psychological impact, too. To be clear, I wouldn't change her power at all, including the camera shift and the loud audio cue. I think it's fantastic, interesting, powerful, plays into high skill ceiling for both survivor and killer. It's just this forced jump scare thing that I'm not keen on. That said, though, I know that this is exactly the reason why people like her, so... Of course, objectively, she's also really good at breaking powerful loops by placing traps and having insane map control when the traps are positioned properly. Even against low-rank killers who just leave traps anywhere and everywhere, you find yourself accidentally triggering them because why would you even think to check for a trap there? She can slow the game down as you're more cautious, if not for fear of dying, then just for fear of being made to jump in such a cheap and jarring way. She gets a 4 out of 5 Pebsie cries and a 4 out of 5 Pebsie hypes. For being a terrifying killer, I know that I'm ragging on that ability, but like, it is good. I don't want to talk about the Doctor. Oof. I don't want to talk about the Doctor, because I'm going to upset everyone. There's some killers, like the Hag, that have a frustration tier in my mind. And the Doctor is the king of the frustration tier. Be warned, the Doctor is my least favorite killer in the entire game. As mentioned earlier, playing against Billy feels rewarding because you have to make use of the tools available to you as a survivor in interesting ways with an emphasis on alertness. The Doctor should feel like that, but shockingly, just taking away your ability to drop a pallet or vault a window is frustrating rather than enjoyable. My issue with the Doctor is that general game sense and ability doesn't apply. This is also true of the Nurse, but in an interesting way. The Doctor is just zap at the right time and you win because the survivors are helpless. But I don't think that the Doctor is particularly strong, and there's definitely a moderate degree of skill required to timing your zaps right, but playing against him as a survivor is nothing but frustrating. His chase music is the loudest, you're screaming constantly, which is frankly painful, and I don't think his tier 3 madness, hold M1 for a bit, has any real impact on the game other than slowing things down slightly, but again, in a boring way rather than an interesting way. Randomly screaming while in tier 3 means that you physically can't play stealthily to try and get out of a chase, something that's frankly an important part of the game in my mind. I'm not talking about avoiding chases, but escaping chases. That is all about stealth. The only part of his design that I like are the apparitions, which are creepy. His visual design is cool, and making skill checks display in different places or having them go in reversed keeps you on your toes. His whole design is meant to stress you out and make you panic, and these all support that. Unfortunately, though, that is something that I really don't want or enjoy when I'm playing this game, and he isn't necessarily stronger for it. It's just irritating. So, despite making me physically sick, he doesn't score highly on the cryometer, as I don't find him hard to counter. Just annoying. He gets a 2 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 1 out of 5 on the hypometer, as I despise his design with only 1 or 2 saving graces. It would be a -1 if that was a thing I decided I would do. but it's difficult to display. This is fine. It's a 1 out of 5. Better, the trap is better, but these rankings don't make any sense. But then the regular rankings don't make sense anyway. What? Huntress. We go from one of my least favorite killers to one of my most favorite killers. The Huntress is, in my mind, close enough to perfection. She takes a high degree of skill to play, skill that ties into other parts of the game's core design, like looping. In the right hand, she can pull off insane trick shots, and in the wrong hands, she can still play well, but again, high skill ceiling. Her lullaby is haunting, and its lack of directionality adds a great degree of mystery to an otherwise basic killer design. As a survivor, if you're good at looping, then you can do well with additional consideration for openings like windows or over the top of pallets that will allow her to hit you. You even have to be careful dropping pallets, as there's a good chance that she'll stop in time to not get stunned and hit you with a hatchet before the animation is finished. She can juke this and many other things to control the directionality and flow of chases, something that few other killers can do. An all-round strong killer with an interesting, easy to understand, hard but fun to master power, and a strong visual aesthetic and sound design gives her a 3 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 3 out of 5 on the hypometer. Leatherface. Another killer that I frankly adore when he's not camping the basement of Insidious. Leatherface is very similar in my mind to Billy. He forces you to make the best possible use of the game's chase systems and be wary of when he's revving up his chainsaw. His design definitely promotes a degree of toxicity, but with the exception of Insidious, which in my mind shouldn't be in the game anyway, all of these moves are counterable if you know what you're doing. Something being counterable, of course, doesn't mean that it's weak though. For every counter, there's a counter, and for every counter, there's a counter, and for every counter, there's a... Chasing as or against Bubba takes everything you know about chasing and forces you to consider timing and distance in a more thorough and yet frantic way than any other killer. This is true of both Chainsaw Boys, of course, so I won't go into it too much further. Visually, he looks exactly like he does in the films, which is all you can really ask for of a licensed character. And although it'd be nice to have some more cosmetics, the whole face of the survivors you've killed thing is absolutely awesome. Leatherface is another great licensed killer with a power that rewards skilled play for both roles. He gets a 4 out of 5 on the cryometer for being, in my opinion, just a little bit better than Billy, and a 3 out of 5 on the hypometer. Frederick Krueger. And again, we continue with the wins. Freddy is currently the most powerful killer in the game, and being my favorite slasher villain, cool. That's fine. Everything's fine here with that. I feel like they got everything about his aesthetic spot on. The way that he shuffles his finger knives, the way that he laughs when people get taken into Dream World, and the authentic lullaby. That is really important. That is an iconic piece of music right there. So while I might score him highly there, it's interesting that his power feels so strange and powerful. That joke I wrote about 3 weeks ago, and then I watched Asimov's video from about 2 months ago where he made the same joke, so I was going to cut it out, but then I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give Asimov's a shout out. Didn't rip you off on purpose, although that seems to be a reoccurring theme at the minute. Sorry, Asimov's. Forgive me. With teleportation, gen slowdowns, general game slowdowns while players try to wake up, misdirection via snares, and even the ability to place down fake pallets, he feels more than a little bit over-designed in the gameplay department. Not that I disagree with any of these powers on their own, but to have 4 or 5 mechanics I'd consider to be core makes him a bit of a confusing mess to play against. This scores him highly on the cryometer, as exactly how this Freddy will play might be totally different to any other Freddy depending on how they utilize each of his abilities, but if anyone was overdue a redesign, for the second time, it's him. As he stands, he's crazy overpowered and just a little bit of a mess. I'd score him low on the hypometer for this reason, but I just can't do that to my boy Freddy. He gets our first 5 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 3 out of 5 on the hypometer. If he wasn't so over-engineered, it would be a 4, but alas. 3 is still a good score. The pig. Some people don't like the pig. Those people are wrong. I think I'm just a sucker for simple design, but at her core, Pig sneaks up on survivors, gets a first hit in, and then chases them normally. As she can be quite slow due to her stealthy nature, she gets an additional bonus of slowing the game down via her helmets, and honestly, I'm totally here for that. I love stealth killers, and her ability to hide from survivors during chases for a crafty advantage sets her apart from any other killer. When I find out who is playing, I immediately have to be on high alert. Her additional speed when ambushing is enough to catch out even the most eagle-eyed survivor, and when she revs up an ambush around smaller loops, you basically have to commit to a direction and hope for the best. I think people would want me to rank her low on both of these, but like I say, simple design both visually and mechanically, an effective power with helmets to make up for a lack of map pressure. It's cool, it's nice, it's not fantastic or amazing, but it's the core of Dead by Daylight. Decision making, chases. It's fine. She gets a 3 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 3 out of 5 on the hypometer. The Clown. Clown is criminally underrated. He's a killer all about shifting and changing loops with the only area of effect power in the game, barring any add-ons. Good Clown players, shout out Pebsie, can destroy even the most experienced of rank 1 survivors because he closes down loops. This is another example of a killer playing to other game mechanics, not overriding them, but adding an extra element to them that survivors need to be aware of. I struggle countering Clown in all honesty because I'm so focused on finding a good loop to use and he can just shut it down straight away. This can be learned, of course, which is why unlike Doctor, who just removes your ability to use loops, you have to adapt the way you play instead. Design-wise, I think he looks and sounds cool. He's a large, unstealthy boy whose gameplay plays into that style. He's a big guy, and his power is about blocking areas of the map. That's neat. I like it. Strategy. Unfortunately, that's not enough to earn him a high score on the hypometer, but he does get a 3 out of 5 on the cryometer, which I think is higher than a lot of people would place him, and only 2 Pebsie hypes, as he isn't much beyond an M2 throw and M1 hit, even with the new speed bottles. Oh, heck, and his new chase music is the best chase music in the game. Spirit! Alright, let's talk about Spirit. It's no secret that for the longest amount of time, I have complained about Spirit and said that she is a killer in need of a rework. She's so strong and requires such a low degree of skill to play. Even if you don't use her power right, the fact that she flickers in and out of existence means that she's really hard to predict. You can't tell when she's committing to a direction, and so you can very often mess yourself up at very, very safe loops playing against the Spirit. And it's not about skill. It's purely about luck of when she's going to flicker in and out of existence. If players could control that ability, that would be different, but they can't. I'm not talking about phasing, by the way. I'm talking about how she moves. She kind of phases in and out at random. Her phase walking ability is crazy powerful. If you're uninjured, then sure, run in a direction for a bit and then walk in the other direction, but the moment you take a hit, no chance. You're done. Chase over. The flip side of this, of course, is that it's extremely satisfying when you do outplay her while injured. That's good. I like that. But overall, she's terrifying to go against, and in my mind, one of the most critically overpowered killers. I like the skill play and faking phasing. That's cool. That takes skill, but it isn't necessary to totally wreck with her. I like her ability plays into her lore, too, and I like her visual design. She also makes me jump like mad, but not in a cheap way like the Hag. That's satisfying. Look, here's the thing. The cryometer isn't about killer's power specifically, although it very obviously directly relates to that. It's about how I feel about that killer. And with Spirit, I feel terrified because I know that even if I have been matched against a rank 15, there's a very good chance they will down me because of luck. She gets a 5 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 2 out of 5 on the hypometer. Legion. Yes. Runny go fast, people. Yes. Runny go fast, people. One thing I've never understood about Legion is that they're meant to be like a lot of people, and it was a great opportunity to do something crazy like having AI-controlled killers that you instruct to patrol areas and stuff. A little army of killers that force the survivors into playing stealthily. Whatever, that's a topic for a different video, no doubt. The Legion irritates me because I know that chases aren't going to be very interesting. They'll run fast, hit me once, then head off to the next survivor. Or they'll commit and not really have any special abilities and probably give up after a few minutes. The fact is that viable Legions feel like they're played almost exclusively by Legion mains at red ranks, and sure, like with any killer, you can destroy a team easily if you've spent 2,000 hours mastering that character. But the fact is that in my mind, Legion doesn't do anything interesting. Deep Wound slows the game down, but in a really boring way that shouldn't ever lead to downs, especially not at red rank, so it barely makes a difference unless played absolutely perfectly. Maybe if the Deep Wound mechanic is different, I'm not just talking about making the timer shorter, although that was a good change. I mean, something completely different. As it stands, I'm not really that fussed about Legion mechanically or aesthetically. Okay, I'll say one nice thing. Legion is particularly strong when it comes to map pressure. There you go, Legion mains. There's your nice thing about Legion. A cool idea for a killer, but ultimately I feel the execution is poor. 2 on the cryometer and 1 on the hypometer. Lag. Once again, we switch from overtly negative to overtly positive. The Plague isn't played a whole lot, which I think is a real shame as she's... The Plague isn't played a whole lot, which I think is a real shame as she's super strong. I fear getting sick in the first place from the very moment I know who it is I'm up against. Sickness means that you don't fare well in chases. Players can spread sickness to each other, and the only way around it is to give the killer something in return. The ability to gain corruption and absolutely decimate even the best of chasers. Unlike most killers, tackling Plague requires coordination between your team. That person just cleansed. Should I? Or should I stick to being 1 hit point down? No, that's bad. That split-second decision-making is top-tier Dead by Daylight. That's the whole point of the game, and it shines through so clearly with the Plague. I also just want to re-highlight the whole survivors spreading infection thing. Throughout the game, we're taught that cooperation is key, and to be forced into situations where we have to think about every cooperative action is fantastic game design and not something that any other killer does. Beyond that, we have a host of interesting design choices. She hits with a flail, she's a towering, threatening force to be reckoned with, and she has multiple options during chases. Does she go for the M1 early, or does she give the survivor sickness and wait out the injury? I think that this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to give her a 4 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 5 out of 5 on the hypometer for having one of my favorite designs in the entire game. She is just so damn different to every other killer on the roster. Foes to Gase. As I've already mentioned, I have a soft spot for stealth killers. GhostFace is one of them. When he was first announced, we all collectively shivered in anticipation of seeing him stick his head round a corner. Turns out that wasn't really the point of him, as cool as that part of his design is. GhostFace is so freaking broken that no one knows how to actually break him out of stealth. It feels like pure chance. They've patched it about 3 times now, and they still can't seem to get it right. It only feels proper when you're on the hook and do it. So, as a result, he is insanely powerful. His ability to hide his terror radius and red stain mid-chase is unparalleled and makes TL wall looping and even the killer shack at times a real struggle. Combine that with the power to expose people, and it makes for a wildly unfun killer to play against. If it wasn't broken, it would probably feel different, but it is, so it isn't. It's weird because he basically has the same power as Myers, just for individuals rather than everyone at once, and yet I simply don't enjoy playing as him or against him the same way that I do Myers. I think it's because the ability to snap him out of his stealth by looking at him is crucial to his design, and that element seems eternally bugged, or at least I have to assume it is. This isn't the way it's meant to be, right? Surely. So, although I like his design and the sounds of leather folding in as he crouches, and his weird tailed thingies, I have to rank him low on this list for being not especially powerful, but still being especially irritating. A 2 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 2 out of 5 on the hypometer. Demogorgon. When they first announced there would be a Stranger Things chapter, this game went wild. It saw the biggest influx of new players ever, only to be topped by Pyramid Forehead a year later. After a slew of great killers, but no real licenses, unless you count Ghostface, which personally I don't. I mean, I know he was in Scream, but it's a Halloween costume. It's a Halloween costume. He was in Scream, but to make fun of he's a real licensed killer, don't get me wrong, but I don't see him that way. It was so refreshing to see a killer from a modern, hugely popular franchise. They even got the likenesses to Natalie Dyer and Joe Keery. So freaking cool. We knew from this moment on that literally anything was possible. They could add any killer in the future from any franchise. Like, for example, the Xenomorph and the map being the Nostromo, right? This year, maybe? Fingers crossed. The demo is a fun killer to play, but not one that I necessarily fear. He can teleport, yes, but only to positions he's set down around the map that can be taken out extremely easily. For most of the time, he's basically an M1 killer, and his shred is useful only when you catch a survivor out of position or want to break a pallet fast during a chase. Even then, it's easy to dodge. I like him, but I don't fear him, and there's very little about him that makes me cry. He gets a 2 out of 5 on the cryometer, but a 4 out of 5 on the hypometer. Not because of being interesting mechanically, but purely because I can remember the hype we all collectively had when the Stranger Things chapter was announced. He's cool. It was a cool chapter. Oni. The Oni is not overpowered. What he is a massive threat to any survivor that finds himself out of position during a chase. I think that a lot of people conflate that with being OP. You can run Oni around endlessly, but it takes a fair bit of skill to do so. I think that people also struggle with the fact that he is such a bulky, imposing figure with incredible audio design to match. Everything about this guy screams power. And if I wasn't so terrible with him, he'd probably be my favorite killer. His power of drawing in blood is similar to Ghostface or Myers' charge up mechanic, while his dash basically turns him into Billy, but more controllable. He isn't a cheap killer. He doesn't expose you. He doesn't mess with established game mechanics. He sort of combines them in an interesting way that makes for unique encounters. In my mind, he's one of the strongest killers, and honestly, I don't dread seeing him, but when I do, I know that I'm going to be in for a challenge. A challenge! Not frustration. There is a difference. That's what separates this guy from an overpowered, low skill ceiling killer like Spirit or Freddy. And astoundingly, what he doesn't have is an unreachable skill ceiling like the Nurse does. Games against bad Onis can still be tense and enjoyable. You know, looking at his power and stats, I couldn't tell you why that is. On paper, he should play the same way that other killers do, i.e. if the killer is bad, then the game is over quick, and if he's good, then it's also over quick. And yet, I always feel satisfied when I play against the Oni. Something about the combination of abilities that he has works really, really really well. He's the only killer to get both a 5 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 5 out of 5 on the hypometer. Not my personal favorite, but well deserving of that accolade if I ever take the time to get good at him. Deathslinger. Deathslinger is one of the most, if not the most, fun killers to play. He's got a high skill ceiling and a pretty unique mechanic. Personally, I think it's really cool that they added an actual gun to the first-person view that killers have. As for playing against him, well, unfortunately for me, he falls into the category of annoyance and frustration. I find that his hits are largely inconsistent, with some shots seeming to go through me and miss, and others impaling me from several meters away. Putting that aside, I really like how switched on you have to be to counter Slinger. A big part of Huntress' ability is keeping count of how many hatchets she's thrown, and with the Schlonger, it's all about when and if he has reloaded. You have to play loops out very differently before, after, and in between shots, and this makes for some really interesting scenarios. Again, he is a killer which rewards you for utilizing the existing mechanics and getting good at them. I don't personally place him particularly high threat-wise. He's a good killer, a great killer in certain hands, and a poor killer in weaker hands. I actually look forward to playing against him. His visual design and aesthetic is really cool too. I dig the cowboy vibe and the sadistic laughs he makes when he hits, and the genuine pain when you break him out of his harpoon or he gets stunned. The sound of his spurs ringing out with each step is a nice touch too. He gets a 3 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 4 out of 5 on the hypometer for doing something different and having a very strong theme. Triangle forehead. This is probably the hardest one for me to talk about. I have zero attachment to the Silent Hill franchise, but I know for a fact that square face is a massive deal to Silent Hill fans. So please bear that in mind when I say that I really do not like having this killer in Dead by Daylight. Once again, much like Freddy, he feels extremely over-engineered. The lines in the ground, the cages of atonement that bypass things like DS or will make it, the sort of ranged attack that, while cool, don't get me wrong, is really just down to guesswork and luck to counter. There's a lot going on at once, and none of it feels particularly fun to play against. Once again, the point of this list is to look at things from a survivor's perspective and see what is fun and rewarding to play against. And unfortunately for me, Pyramid Head. Shock horror, I just said his name correctly for the first time ever on this channel. Pyramid Head just isn't a very satisfying killer to play against. Maybe this is down to me not knowing how to counter. By now, I think I do a pretty alright job of it though, and it really does feel an awful lot like luck. When it comes to his visual design, I feel like he sticks out weirdly and doesn't quite mesh with the world of the game. It makes no sense that someone who can literally rip the flesh off a human like it's nothing has to recoil back when a bit of wood hits them. To be fair, it's already ridiculous that beasts like Myers, who can withstand multiple gunshots, do too, but it feels even stranger with Pyramid Head. Blinding makes no sense either. He literally has no visible eyes. How does that work? Same with Demogorgon, by the way. What is going on there? He's a strong killer, but he's more frustrating than he is mechanically interesting to me, and I really don't think that he fits in with the rest of the game. He gets a 2 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 1 out of 5 on the hypometer. I know that that is more about design than it is about his ability, but it all tallies up in my mind. He's over-engineered. I don't think he's particularly strong, but he is particularly frustrating to counter and feels quite luck-based. Blight. When the Blight was first announced, I thought he was pretty lame. On the PTB, I thought he was extremely weak. 8 months on, I feel exactly the same way. As always, as with every killer, good Blight mains are fantastic with him, but most of the time, the moment he uses his power, I find it extraordinarily easy to lose him. Here's the counter. It's freaking real tough. Run to a corner and crouch. He'll shoot right past you. Walk to another corner out of his line of sight, being careful not to leave any scratch marks, and crouch again. Congratulations! You have officially outplayed the Blight's entire ability. I know that this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I know that it is. I like his visual design. That could be a saving grace, but it's not enough to get me over his boring, super clunky ability that every map in the game just wasn't set up for. A game mechanic like this requires level design to match, and Dead by Daylight's maps just weren't built with this in mind. Even the map reworks aren't. Whereas every other killer in the game has a mechanic that complements existing map design, he just doesn't. He's just bad. He gets our only 1 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 2 out of 5 on the hypometer for looking and moving pretty cool, but design-wise being super boring and clunky and not really working. The twins! When the twins were announced, I was extremely hyped for them. I was in the midst of one of my yearly month-long DBD breaks, and the twins pretty much pulled me back in. I complained about the Blight being a safe and easy to implement killer, and the fact that the twins was essentially 2 killers in 1 was freaking cool in my mind. Brand new mechanics like splitting off and controlling another game world entity with more mobility, an aspect of stealth, and Victor having no terror radius and so on. It was extremely ambitious. Of course, in practice, it was too ambitious. They sucked. They were bad. Very few redeemable qualities there. Even once the major bugs were fixed, and there were a lot of major bugs. Now you see one in maybe every 50 matches or so, and when you do face them, it's always more frustrating than it is fun. How could you possibly learn to counter such a unique killer when you basically never play against them? In the 300 or so hours I've played the game since their release, I'm pretty sure I've only played them maybe 10 times? That's insane. They've got to be one of the least played killers in the entire game, and it's a shame because there's so much potential there. Unfortunately though, I can't fathom how to dodge Victor. He hits like a truck despite being so small. The fact that you stop for a moment when you get him off your head makes you extremely vulnerable. His locker holding mechanic is cool, but as a survivor there's no counterplay. You just have to wait and hope for the best. I love their design. I just hate how they play and how you play against them. That's a 2 out of 5 on the cryometer and a 2 out of 5 on the hypeometer. Our final rankings are, on the cryometer, which is threat as a red rank survivor, at 1 Pebsie cry, we have the Blight. At 2 Pebsie cries, we have Nurse, Myers, Doctor, Legion, Ghostface, Demogorgon, Pyramid Head, and the Twins. At 3 Pebsie cries, we have Trapper, Billy, Huntress, Pig, Clown, and Slinger. At 4 Pebsie cries, we have Wraith, Hag, Bubba, and Plague. And at 5 Pebsie cries, we have Freddy, Spirit, and Oni. Our final rankings on the hypeometer, that is good visual, mechanical design, or just killers that I think are cool, let's be honest. At 1 Pebsie hype, we have Trapper, Doctor, Legion, and Pyramid Head. At 2 Pebsie hypes, we have Clown, Spirit, Ghostface, Blight, and the Twins. At 3 Pebsie hypes, we have Huntress, Bubba, Freddy, and Pig. At 4 Pebsie hypes, we have Wraith, Billy, Nurse, Hag, Demogorgon, and Slinger. And at 5 Pebsie hypes, we have Myers, Plague, and Oni. Holy hell. We did it. I've been recording for 50 minutes. This script is 7,000 words long, over half the length of my dissertation. This video was taken about a month and a half to actually finally pull together, but we did it. I feel like it'd be unfair to just leave it as it is, as you probably clicked on this video expecting a more traditional killer tier list, so here you go. Alright, this is what you want. This is what you want. Trapper, kind of powerful. Good threat in the right hands, you go B. Huntress, very good. Very, very good. Wraith, C. Bubba is one of my favorites. I'm going to put him A. Doctor, rubbish. So you got a C. Freddy, SS, of course, the most powerful in the game right now. Pig, objectively, is pretty underpowered, so you get a D. Clown, I like him, but like for the most part, he's not too strong, so he gets a C. Hag, very, very good. You get an A. Hillbilly, also good. You go B. Spirit, once again, most powerful killer in the game. Legion, D. Plague, again, I like her design, but she's not that powerful. I think I'm going to put her C. Nurse gets to be S. Myers, unfortunately, again, not that great. He's D. Demogorgon, yeah, I like him, but again, it's about design. I like his design, but he's not that strong. You go C. Ghostface, sure, you can go B, Ghostface. You're reasonably powerful. Oni gets to be S tier. Deathslinger gets to be D tier, I guess. Yeah. Don't like Pyramid Head. Don't like Pyramid Head. D tier. The Twins. The boring Twins. D. And the Blight, also D. Should I balance this out a little bit? I might move Billy up to A. I'm going to move Billy up to A. I'm going to move Wraith to B now because of the buff. I feel like I should have one more move from here to there. No, this is it. I'm committing to this. This is my traditional killer tier list. There you go. Okay, so that's done. If you have any complaints, I don't care. These are my opinions. I'm sure the Ots or whoever rated these guys differently. I don't care. It's my view. I'm sure I have about 1,000 hours in the game. I'm sure that my opinion will be completely different when I have 2,000 hours, and then probably change again when I have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and so on and so forth. Today's question comes from CapZ, who asks, do you plan on doing any gameplay videos in the future or games from your VOD? Well, guess what, Caps? Right now, I'm announcing my second channel, Pebsie Max. I've forgotten who suggested that name. On Pebsie Max, I'll be uploading Twitch highlights, including unedited game highlights, interesting clips, and weekly compilations. There will be a new video on the channel every other day from Monday onwards. Actually, this video might not come out on Monday, so the next Monday onwards, that's when it will be. That's when it will be. So go and sub over there if you fancy it. Link in the description and also in the pinned comment. I may also upload update videos on there or just other lower quality stuff that I don't think fits on this main channel. As well as the names on screen right now, I would like to thank Gen Rush's Club and millions of the entity members, Lewis Hernan, Rissin, Merciless Cheeseburger, Just a Pigeon, Santi Gamer, Valiant Praetorian, Joshua Daney, Remiz, Spikeo Pro, sorry, Josh Archer, and Alia E. Also, Cooge joined as editing the video. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. We did it, Reddit. I think it's sometimes difficult to tell what state is in. Probably just me and my blind ass. What? Hacks enabled? What just happened?